Hello again and welcome to another bearing removal and installation video featuring Boca bearings. Now today's engine is an engine that was gifted to me by a really good friend, and it is a Magnum XL61RFS 4-stroke engine. Now I don't know exactly the year that this engine came out or how long they've been in production or were in production, but Magnum, the line of Magnum engines, they produced 4-stroke engines in the sizes of 30, 52, 61, 70, 80, 91, and 120. I do not believe they made anything larger than a 120. Now this 61 is more closely related to the 52 than it is the 70 with regards to the size of the bearings. This little engine, I don't know the history of it, but it really gave me all sorts of challenges trying to get it all disassembled. Let's see if removing the bearings is going to be just as challenging as disassembling the engine was. Okay, here on the table I've got all the items I need to disassemble, or not disassemble, remove the bearings in this Magnum XL61RFS 4-stroke engine. The cam bearing is still installed in there, obviously, and so are the main bearings on the crankshaft. And here I've got the cam cover where the other cam bearing is. So I've got a new pounder here to remove crankshafts and other things, and that is a nice Delrin block. I've got my standard hammer, flat nose punch, and to remove the camshaft bearings I've got this nice camshaft bearing removal tool that I'll be using, in addition to my nice new Delrin block for using to tap the bearings out in my vise. I've got my heat gun and my heat resistant glove. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to go ahead and just remove the bearings out of the crankshaft, or the crankcase. So with that, let me go ahead and put my glove on and heat this thing up. Now this engine is, like I said, took a lot of effort to get it apart, a lot. So it has been through the ultrasonic cleaner several times in that attempt to get some parts out, and one of the parts that was hardest to get out was just the camshaft itself. So it should still have some oil in here, I'm hoping it has enough oil to help facilitate the removal of these items, because it sat in oil quite often too in the process of trying to get it disassembled. One thing I didn't do, which I will do here after I heat it up, is spin this crankshaft so you can hear how bad these bearings are. You hear that? All right, let's see if it doesn't really seem like it's got much heat in it, but let's see if it'll come out. All right. Okay, so our crankshaft is out, and it left the bearing in both bearings in there. Obviously the rear bearing stayed in the crankcase also. So let's see about getting this front bearing out next. I don't think this thing is too hot for me to hold, but maybe it will be. We'll see. It's a little warm. Yep, I think I'm gonna have to put my glove back on here and hold that. It took a little bit more heat than I thought. And there's our front bearing. Now the question is, do I have an edge to get on here to get this rear bearing out? And it looks like I do. Let's see if I've still have enough heat in here to get this out. I don't have the history of this engine, so I can't tell if this is the original set of bearings in here or not. But all I know is it was really challenging getting it apart. Yeah, that thing's just about out now. Okay, there we go. Our rear bearing is out. Wow. Does that thing look... I think I can take my glove off now. thing looks pretty rough. Well, the funny thing is it looks rough and it doesn't feel as bad as it looks. Now this front bearing is, I know you can't feel it and maybe not hear it as well, but so yeah, these bearings are pretty horrible. So let me get a paper towel here. Next thing I'm going to do here is move the crankshaft out of the way. We'll be removing these camshaft bearings now. And I really enjoy this task now. This is, before I had this cam bearing removal tool, this used to just be one of those tasks that you really just didn't look forward to when you're trying to replace bearings in engines, because it was just such a painful thing to do and there was really no good way to do it. But this buddy of mine, Bill, has developed this tool which basically goes along the same lines as just an expanding jaw chuck, where you just insert this into the bearing and then insert the expansion rod, and then you just draw it out using a screw or a nut on a threaded screw area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull my expansion rod out, and I'm just going to chuck this one portion of the tool into my vise to hold it, so that there's one less thing for me to hold on to. And we will take the bearings out of the crankcase first, which is this bearing that's in here. This has always been the one that's been most challenging if you didn't have a tool. I mean, both of them are. But so how this thing operates is, I've got this bushing that I'm going to put on here, and I'm just going to push this in place and engage it in that bearing all the way. Push my bushing up against there and insert my expansion rod to lock that bearing on place, and then we'll just tighten that thing up, and I'll use my adjustable jaw wrench to just pull that bearing right out. And see, that very first turn, you can feel it start to pull that bearing out. In fact, I can sometimes hear it pop. And there you have it. There's our bearing. So now what I need to do is just push in on that expansion rod to get it to extract, come out, so it relieves tension on that, and then I can pull that bearing off. And it's as simple as that. Bearing removal has become as simple as that. So now I'm going to remove that bushing, because that's used for the crankcase itself. This particular bushing is used for removing out of the cam covers. So I'm going to put this one on here, same methodology. Put our cam bearing, or insert our cam cover with bearing right on there. Insert my expansion rod, so that's stuck on place, and now we'll just run this nut up so it's nice and tight, and I'll hold this cover and just extract this bearing. Holding that cover might be a little bit more challenging in this instance. Okay, I got it. Notice I did not heat or oil this cover at all. So it probably could have been a little bit easier to remove this bearing, but I've never really had the need to do that. Wow, and it didn't remove that bearing. That's interesting. Well, let's try this again. Push our expansion rod out. It's really very interesting. That's the first time I've never had this thing extract a bearing. But like I said, this engine has given me fits at every I didn't even realize there's this little bitty invisible clear gasket on this cover. So let me take that off real quick. Let's insert this again. Let's get that. It's locked in place. Let's give this a shot again here. This is very interesting. Very interesting indeed. I wonder if... So this is the particular tool that I've been using to do a lot of this testing with, and I'm beginning to wonder if I've reached the lifespan of this particular tool because it does not appear to be extracting that bearing. So I'm going to put a little bit of penetrating oil on this. Now I think I'm going to heat that thing up, and we're going to try this one more time. But before I do that, I'm going to push this on here. You know, it's just weird. It feels like, looking at this bearing, it just feels different. Like it's, like that bearing came apart in there. Let me see here. Let me see about how deep that's going. It's going about that deep. It should be getting to the other side of that. But see, look, when I go to pull on it like that, it's almost like it's not getting the inner race, the race on the inside of that. Let me pull this tool out and take a quick look at the tip and see if we've got some kind of issue going on here. Looks like this tool might be wearing. So this would be the 26th, I think, time I've used this. Let me pause the video real quick because I've got another version of this tool. It's not another version, it's another iteration of this tool. And I'm going to give it a shot and see if I get any different result with it, because maybe one of the lips on this has given way here. So let me pause this real quick and get my other tool out. Okay, so I pulled out, this is the tool I was just using. This is another version that Bill had sent to me, or just a duplicate. It might have some slightly different characteristics to it or dimensions, I'm not sure, but what I was just doing, I was comparing the way this felt when it went in here and engaged. And you can see how I could pull out quite a bit on that. Now let me do the same thing with this particular tool here. I've got my expansion rod out. I insert that. And right away it seems like it's gripping better. So I don't know, maybe I've reached the limit of usage of that particular tool. So what I'm going to do here is, I've got a little bit of oil in here. I'm going to chuck this tool in here, and I'm going to heat this thing up just a little bit. Heat this guy up just a little bit and see if that helps at all. Alright, I don't know how hot I got that. Hopefully not too hot that I can't handle it. It's pretty warm. Get that out of the way. Let me insert my rod here all the way. Alright, let's see if we can get this bearing out this time. That felt different. That felt better. Okay, that one actually removed the bearing that time. So I have got a sinking feeling that I may have exceeded the lifespan, or reached the lifespan of this particular tool. So let me push my expansion rod in here, get that out. That is interesting. That expansion rod doesn't want to come out or go back in. There we go. And our bearing should be right there. That was very peculiar. So I think there are some slight differences between these two tools. This is the latest one that Bill had provided to me, so it's the latest, greatest update. So you can see there's some differences here in the size of the nuts. Overall length, I think, might be a little bit different. To me, this looks a little bit stouter. I don't know. I'm going to continue to try to use this original tool on some other extractions and see if I still have the same results. The result being that it did not work. I mean, it worked for taking the crankcase out, but maybe it was just that this was just so much tighter in there. But this is the cam cover bearing has always been the easiest one to remove, always. So there's our bearing removal for this engine, and like I said, this engine has fought me at every step, and we just saw that it did that again here with that tool. Now, was it fighting, or did I actually lose this tool in the process of using it all these times? I can't say for sure. All I can say is we finally got the bearing out using the secondary tool, and I'll clean all these parts up and get ready for the bearing installation portion. Okay, here I am back ready to do the bearing installation portion of this video, and I have a funny feeling that this is going to be by far the easiest portion of what I'm going to do with this engine so far. So on the table I've got my crankcase cleaned up, camshaft cover cleaned up, crankshaft cleaned up, same Delrin block. I've got my set of Boca bearings here. I've got a drive to use to drive that main crankshaft into place, and I've got another bearing installation tool here that I'll use to install the crankshaft or the camshaft bearings. Hammer, vise, and of course a jar that has some Boca's Lightning Lube road power in it, because this is what I like to use for reinstallation, installation of new bearings, and assembly lube. And it looks like I don't know that I have enough in there, so I'm going to put another little pump in there. And since I really can't reach my finger down in here, I'm just going to put a little pump down there and get that in there. So what I'm going to do next is just quickly lubricate all these parts up for the engine to facilitate the bearing installation. And then I'll take the bearings out, look at those, and talk about those for a moment. Now this case did come out pretty clean now. I had to do a little bit of sanding on the inside with some 600 grit sandpaper, because there was just some stuff that was just really caked on there. I don't know how much runtime was on this engine, but when I took it apart, the top of the piston didn't look all that bad. So it's really an interesting engine because of how difficult it's been to disassemble. So let's look at the bearings I've got for this Magnum engine. Actually, I don't want to close that up because I'm going to put a little bit on the bearings. So this bearing kit for the main crankshaft is an ENK-031 kit. And then, of course, same kit number for all Surpass style engines. This style of engine, whether it be ASP, Magnum, SC, OS, is a CSK-003 kit, and that is these small camshaft bearings. So let me just take these out real quick. There's nothing to be done with these camshaft bearings other than to install them. Now, the front bearing on this will have to take one shield out, it looks like. Well, actually, one shield there, and then both on the main bearing, because we like to have the main bearing completely opened in 99% of the applications for these 2- and 4-stroke glow engines of ours. So to remove these shields, I'm just going to use a really small flat blade screwdriver and just get right in here at the top of the inner race, punch in and lift up on this metal shield. These are ZZ style bearings, which means that's a metal shield that's not replaceable. So when I do this, I am permanently damaging that seal, or that shield in this case. It cannot be put back on, and we wouldn't want them back on. So the front bearing is going to need to have one side removed also. Get that out, and then we can get these bearings installed. Okay, so now our bearings are ready to be prepped to be installed. We'll get this lubricated here. Now what I like to do when I'm installing bearings is I'll always put the main crankshaft bearing on the crankshaft first, and then when I install it in the engine case, I'll put the front bearing in first, and then that way that bearing will act as a centering mechanism for the main crankshaft. So this has all been lubricated, everything is ready to go. Let's move these guys out of the way for now, and let me get my glove back on, and we'll do a little bit of heating on this case to facilitate the good installation of these bearings. I'm thinking to myself now, before I do that, you know, I think I want to put these camshaft bearings in first. Not that I really have to, but I don't think there would be any issue with putting them in with the crankshaft in, but let's just go ahead and do that first. I don't think I need to change anything here for that. I think we're good there. So, with that said, let me move those off to the side here. Let's move these into the foreground here, and we'll talk a little bit about this tool. So this is a cam bearing insertion tool, the latest iteration that Bill gave me. So the bearing just fits on the end of this tool perfectly like that, and these rings here are basically depth setting guides. So what I will do here is I will actually rotate these all up, insert this in here all the way so I can feel the outer edge, and then I'll just push this, rotate that one up there. Now I'm going to hold it firmly and rotate these others on there to lock it in place. So now that is my depth gauge. So now I know that when I go and push that bearing in right there, that it's going to be in place. So now the only thing I need to figure out is, okay, that looks like that's going to sit really well right there. So there's a little bit of oil here. Let's just put this thing on here. And I like to kind of do one of these types of things where you kind of pre-insert it, and you can see the amount of insertion that bearing's going to require. So I'm just going to lay this right here on the edge of this and just gently tap this into place. Looks like that could go just a little bit further. And there you have it. That bearing is inserted. And that's as simple as that is. Now obviously for inserting into the cam cover itself, we don't really need the depth gauge, because we're basically just going to stand this up on here. I'll do this on this Delrin block here and just tap that in. And there you go. Did I have to use this tool for that? No, you don't. I could have just as easily sat that thing on here and tapped it in with a block or another flat piece of metal or anything. But since I have the tool, it's like, why not use the tool if you've got the tool? So that's what we did. So that's done. Those items can move off to the side, and now I will heat this case up and we'll get these main bearings installed. Okay, I'm starting to see a little bit of vaporization there of the oil, so that means we're right there at the temperature we need to be. So, and that's all we need to do to install our front bearing. And now our crankshaft bearing, just going to kind of lay it in there, get it centered. I'm going to use my awl here and just start driving that in place and see if we're fully seated. I think we need to go one more tap on that. And there we have it. All new bearings installed in this engine. So now we can continue with the refurbishment of this engine.